say Thank you, Walter. Thank you. This is Dr. Dre, and we're in the next episode of HeleCloud Talks Cloud. I'm just kidding. I'm Lina, but I secretly want a career in rap music. So everyone paying attention to me on LinkedIn and sending me messages, please offer me a career in rap music. This is all I want in life. I'm super excited about this new episode because Walter and I each invited a guest, and I've invited Tsvetan Blagoev. We worked together on my first IT job back in 2006, I think it was, in a web hosting company. We were both support engineers. He would fall asleep on the night shift, and I would make pranks on him, taping him to his chair and things like that. And we're still friends, so that's amazing. He's come a long way working during the day now and possibly not falling asleep.
Yeah, but we're still friends, but you keep telling this story.
I have the pictures, so.
Yeah.
Nice. So now I have to come up with some witty way to introduce Joep, which I don't have. But I invited Joep Piscaer. He's a good friend. We've worked together on quite a few projects by now. Very smart human being, and very happy to have him on the call. We're working together on a separate thing, Cloud Explorers Forum, which is really quite similar to this. So Joep will be here today to spout his knowledge and wisdom on the topics that we have in store for you today.
And I did fall asleep during the day during my first job too.
I fell asleep yesterday. I fell asleep yesterday during a DevOps Days meeting. I had 14 meetings during the day, and then in the evening I was waiting in front of my computer for the 8 o'clock for the meeting, and then at 5 minutes to 8 I just fell asleep. Okay, fine. Whatever. I made it through 14
is a thing.
It is.
Yeah.
So the first thing we wanted to talk about today is a report from Cockroach Labs. I'll post a link in the comments here. It's a report that kind of goes through a comparison, or tries to go through a comparison between Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. And we discussed it yesterday in the pre-call, and it's very metrics based, so it tries to put a metrics approach to comparing these clouds, and it's really difficult, I think, to do that. Anyway, some clouds win on some fronts and some win on other fronts, and I think Lina said it really nicely right before this call. Cloud is so much more than just compute instances. So comparing that only is taking such a small percentage of what really competes these clouds against each other. And I don't know.
Still interesting.
Even then, it's. Virtual machines are such a small part of cloud. But even then, like comparing directly trying to compare numbers to numbers. It's virtually impossible. You don't know anything on the infrastructure layer. What is a VM specifically built out of? What hardware? What software? Are there any performance bugs or not? Things change constantly all the time. So I always take these reports as a good indication, and not as factual matter per se. Also, because in this report, I saw clear winners, I saw clear losers, but the margins were super thin. Like. I think if they run this test again a week later, the results may have been different.
Yeah, may end up in a different generation of hardware that you don't even know that you're ending up on it. So.
Or any of the other variables, yeah.
Yeah, I think the cost, we talked about it yesterday a little bit as well. The cost is much more interesting, but that becomes even more of an apples and oranges comparison. Because how do you realistically display the cost of running an infrastructure on a cloud? It's very difficult.
Well, especially if you think about what is the actual cost. Like, is it per vCPU, per transactions per minute, per gig of RAM, per $1,000?
Actually, the higher the abstraction layer you get, the more correct would be these numbers to your actual business case. Because like having just measuring IOPS or CPU cycles, you don't have the full picture, especially on a full-blown application or a service. So as long as this is good for marketing, so comparing, for example, I/O on Google Cloud and Azure and Amazon, it gives you numbers, and the consumer can surely see these pretty graphs and say, I'm going to pick this one because it's obviously better. But in the ecosystem of his application, that might not be the case.
Yeah.
So for sure, I think even with the as higher you go in this hierarchy, so if we speak about transactions per minute, it's much more sensible to make decision based on this one rather than storage IO.
Yeah,
or
I totally agree.
something. Mhm.
I'd even go one level higher and go the cost of running an entire infrastructure. It's uncomparable because nobody's running an entire infrastructure exactly split in load between 3 clouds. But if you really wanted to know what it's like, having a real life application that runs on 3 clouds and then takes a production workload of traffic, that's where you can start to make actual comparisons. And I think that cost will then
and
kind of
even
dwarf.
then you'd have to consider the ease of use, because you also have a team that needs to operate the infrastructure. Don't just have the cost for the infrastructure, but also the OpEx.
Yeah. I remember we were talking last year to a customer, and they said, we don't really care what cloud we're running on. We don't really care about what it costs because, generally speaking, infrastructure cost is like 5% of the entire picture. So for running actual high-level enterprise applications, so really the infrastructure pricing might vary, availability, those kind of things may vary, but they're really not the most interesting choice for us. And I think it's a good lesson to learn for engineers that have a tendency to geek out on which cloud is better. Ultimately, it's like driving a Mercedes or a BMW. Some people like the BMW and some people like the Mercedes, and one is not arguably a lot better than the other. So
Just different.
Just different.
And again, it's the features that like bring up, even with the car models that you're speaking of, the features bring up the actual difference between those and the regular cars. And same goes for the clouds. So probably the features and the ease of use are more important in this picture. We can see that with enterprise clients in my work as well, because we get a lot of engagements with very large enterprises, and they really put costs behind when you have the solution that they want with the design which is mapped to their needs. They're on board. So obviously it's the most important thing for them. Of course, this is with organizations that have like small negligible constraints in terms of finance. So they just want the work done.
I think a much more interesting bit is the actually the human part, where skill is rapidly becoming a commodity that's really scarce, and that's it's becoming much more of a difficult topic. And I've seen that throughout 20 years of IT in different things. Then some of the niche technologies are better, but if you cannot find people to actually drive your software or hardware or infrastructure because of some niche technology that you're using.
I totally agree. Actually, what I think is missing from this report is something that could be calculated as an index. Let's say it's like a technical depth index, which is tied to each provider. So there is such thing, because when you tie up with Amazon or with Azure, you have certain expertise, which could be eventually quantified, and you could have some index to actually apply on those results and get different costs with the human factor in mind.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that So I was reading a Reddit thread this week on the sysadmins Reddit, and it's nice because that's a Reddit that's more full of traditional sysadmins. So I like being doing a little bit of research outside of my own bubble. And there was some guy started a thread about why he thinks cloud is not good, and he doesn't see any point in doing it. And then he proceeded to explain that he was running a 3-node Ceph cluster with this feature and that feature and all that stuff. I'm like, that's really cool. Like, honestly, I really like that kind of advanced technology. But what if you get hit by a bus? How many people in your company can take over, or how many people can they hire to come in and take care of the Ceph cluster that was set up by
we
previous
a lot. I was CTO for an outsourcing company in the Netherlands a couple of years ago, and we constantly had this discussion of availability of resources and knowledge. We had 1,200 people, but we still made very strict choices in what we did and did not support. Like some guy loved Linux or loved BSD, so he'd set up, mill cluster based on BSD. Super awesome. It would never fail. But
everything fails.
Eventually.
Like he was the only person who understood it well enough to actually do something with it. And so we made very strict technology choices in what do we do and what don't we support. And I think that's the bus factor, as Walter mentioned, is certainly a valid way of looking at technology choices.
Yes,
it's actually
interesting. Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was about to add that it's actually very hard to persuade people that they should stick to something standard. For example, in my team, we have this, in large part, liberty of the developers to use whatever they want, because they are designing the whole solutions on the customer engagements, and we provide them with some infrastructure, and you can find like. One guy is a Debian user, the other one is like, oh, I'm gonna do Gentoo for this one, and no, wait, let's try to standardize this, because after a quarter or a year, this project would be done in a month, but it could be revived for additional features in a year, and someone is going to actually look at your stuff and try to figure out what's going on.
Yeah,
and of course.
That's why infrastructure is only 5% of the equation.
Exactly.
Yes, and me as a person doing managed services and supporting whatever you developers come up with, I hate snowflakes. I hate where every deployment is a unique little snowflake. I want everything to be standardized. I'm a Nazi for standardization.
Yeah, I built an IaaS platform years ago for customers at that same outsourcing company. And we had to fight so many fights with the engineers at the customer sites because, they had their own little way of doing things. And then we'd come in and say, this is the standard. This is our IaaS platform. This is what you're going to do. This is what we give you. And the amount of
fight.
But just it's a fundamental, VMware versus Microsoft, or, I'm used to using this version, or, Debian versus Gentoo, or, whatever. It's so fundamental to a lot of engineers, which I get. I used to be an enormous VMware fanboy, kind of still am. But that doesn't, mean that I don't look at other choices if they make more sense. And, if they do make more sense, standardize on that and go forward.
I think it's part of the growth journey of becoming a senior engineer is actually starting to learn that your opinion is unfortunately not the most important one. You may have sensible things to say, and hopefully you can convince a bunch of other people. But it's much more important to find something that the group can live with. Anyway, next topic. I guess we'll switch things around a little bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about GaiaX. So some of you may have heard about this. Some of you may have not heard about it.
Hey, Walter, you're mispronouncing it.
What?
Really?
It's OpenStack.
Sorry.
Oh,
Burn!
I'm glad we have you here.
I get one witty remark per show.
You can mute yourself to the rest of this one. Bravo.
You're done. Go home. Oh wait, you're already home.
We all are, yeah. But yeah, OpenStack. Water.
GaiaX. It's one of those projects that's it really excites me on a conceptual level, and then when I think about it on a realistic level, it is never going to happen. Never say never. It is most likely not going to happen.
Yeah.
GaiaX is an initiative of several organizations throughout Europe to create kind of a distributed public cloud that is not under control of a single enterprise organization, but is rather a joint effort between these organizations. And that concept sounds really interesting. But unfortunately, at least in my opinion, capitalism works in a different way. And we've arrived in a place where innovation is driven by single enterprises making huge profits off of these clouds, which enable them to invest more into building them. And the other thing is that many companies together is Joep was joking, but he's also not joking. It's exactly what we've seen with OpenStack. OpenStack, super cool technology, but ultimately a ecosystem of companies around the core OpenStack technology that all just wanted to find a way to make money off of OpenStack, with as an end result, a giant mess of politics and not the progress or the beautiful technology that we should have had.
Yeah, because if you add a lot of companies, each with their own interests, it's going to go a lot of ways simultaneously, and as a result, it's never going anywhere. So we've seen it with OpenStack. We're kind of starting to see it with the CNCF, although that's a topic for another discussion. But GaiaX is definitely, I mean, if you look at the companies that are doing this, that are participating, it's the European Commission is kind of the driver, but they have no financial motivation to do so. It's purely based on ethics and political choices, which is, fine for the EC. But then you have, Deutsche Telekom and other large national telecommunications organizations, as well as, local European cloud data centers like OVH. I mean, their interests are just not aligned at all. And I just don't see how that'll ever be resolved. I don't know what you guys think of it. I think it's,
I really hope that it will work out. I just I'm an optimist in many things, but yeah, this is unfortunately raising my pessimism a bit.
Yeah, the metrics also are not in its favor, because the market share of Google Cloud and AWS and Azure are only going up, and GaiaX is not really progressing in a positive way.
No, the relative market share is declining, I think.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I never speak to anyone other than having discussions like this about GaiaX. It's either we should, do something with it because there's money in it, or we're never going to use it because it has no standardized features. It has no single point of contact. I mean, I'm not betting my business on GaiaX. I'd be happy to run all of my stuff in any of the big players, but not a hair on my head will think about running it on GaiaX. Just because
not right now, at least, yeah. The challenges that you list are not unsolvable, but the main challenge then would be having a single organization that deals with this, which kind of starts to look a lot like what we already have.
Yeah, that, or it's going to be like a franchise kind of situation where we have one big umbrella company representing a whole bunch of different companies internally, like in a franchise way. but in the long run, that's going to result in the same political hot mess and technical deadpan that I don't think there's a way out of it.
Maybe if their focus is like getting only infrastructure as a service or hardware as a service from the other providers, and like providing this layer of common services between all. But then again, it's not. I'm not sure what's the incentive here. Is it the providers taking some of the government money that's on the table? Because probably I think that's the thing with this initiative. But as an idea, having a layer that could combine different providers underneath, and even the big players, if you can hook up services from the big players and provide this as an option to the user, I think it's a good idea. But yeah, with a lot of problems to be a lot of bumps on the road.
And even let's say that they solve all the problems and we have a working service. Now I am a global company and I want to deploy my crap around the world. And GaiaX, as far as I can see, is only planning for EU deployments and availability. So it's like I still cannot do global deployments. So I don't know. I don't see it. Welcome to explore with.
How about if you're as big as the biggest enterprises out there? You have the buying power to basically be your own cloud, and then we kind of circle back to the OpenStack discussion. Is this a service, or is this open source software that you can deploy yourself to create your own cloud? And by doing that, you kind of buy into one of the distributed locations of GaiaX, making you a bigger part of the whole thing. I mean, I'd see that as a win if that's possible, and if any big enterprise is willing to take that step, because then you have buy-in. Not just rent the service from GaiaX or whatever organizations, but be part of it, because you're so big, you can be a part of it.
No. Well, I think even for small enterprise, it's possible if GaiaX is flexible enough to do partnership with the big dogs, because what, for example, VMware did with the VMC Cloud is we said, let's take Amazon and we ask them in their data centers to deploy top of the shelf hardware on which we can run VMware. So this is VMC. Basically, you're leasing, you're getting a service, you're getting a VMware approved data center inside of the Amazon availability zone. So, and this thing actually was enabled in like 1 year across all continents. So if you can play with the big dogs, if you have the leverage to do that, you can actually solve this problem that you're speaking of with in terms of geolocation. But again, I think I'm not aware how much did it took in resources and talks to get there, but the actual implementation was like in about a year. So there's also an option, but of course it defeats the purpose of getting something independent from the big players,
Speaking of taking something from big players and the whole talking to big dogs, I want to switch to our next topic about Elasticsearch and Amazon. Walter, do you want
to swear on this show, right?
Yeah, I know. It's because of me. Because I know. It's very difficult. But
so let's start with the most recent development, Walter.
Yeah, so it's been a busy week in that respect. I'll post the initial link there. So Elastic said, "Hey, we don't like that AWS is eating our cake. So we are changing our license to SSPL, which is a license that was first created by the MongoDB guys, and the idea is that it's an open source license-ish license that removes the ability for basically the large cloud providers to run this as a service. Lots of discussion later. The industry has accepted. OSI and the EFF have FSF have decided this is not an open source license, because open source means free for everyone to use as they see fit. So if you start reducing that freedom, then it's a slippery slope down to a proprietary software. And so the community, especially all the Linux distributions, have railed quite hard against SSPL and not going with software that does that. And but Elastic, obviously, they're a little bit worried about AWS eating their cake. And so they put up a story saying, "Okay, we're changing the Elasticsearch licensing because poor little us and the revenue that Amazon is eating." Elastic is a $16 billion company. We're not talking about some mom and pop shop at the garage that is trying to make a living here. And in response, last night, Amazon announced that it's actually forking Elasticsearch and Kibana from the last version that is full open source, 7.10 if I'm correct, and creating an Apache licensed fork and maintaining that over time, which is obviously a very interesting blowback response. And so we don't have that much time left, but I really want to delve into a little bit of what this actually means, because there's several really interesting parts at play here. Yeah, what do you guys think about? Let's go with the most recent part, with Amazon offering a fork of the project. How do you see that going?
Yeah, how did anyone not see that coming is my main response. I mean, Elastic tried to be the victim. Now they are the victim, because they tried to take control of revenue streams, and they were completely put out of control of their own projects by this move, which I think, I don't want to say it serves them right, but it kind of does, because it was a stupid move to begin with. Like if you do open source, but you don't do it well enough to actually become the market leader, I don't think you're in a position to whine about, AWS is making more money than we. So, I mean, it's a complicated discussion with very little time left on the clock, but I think they did this to themselves. Is my conclusion.
And one of the things that struck me from the comments is that on a dealing with Elastic, the company, regardless of the technology, people love the technology, people hate dealing with Elastic, the company. So many bad stories.
I know, and this is my story as well. We were like, we want to use all the features that you get from the Elastic Co version of Elasticsearch and Kibana, but we weren't happy with a lot of the things because we have a customer who's using that version, and we are also using for another customer the Amazon service, managed service, and it's a very different experience. And we just want to have all the functionalities in the Amazon managed service. So I don't want to take sides. I just want everyone to get along so that I can get all the features.
I think that
we can't have nice things.
No, open source, man. Politics.
Have our Elasticsearch needed.
Yeah,
I think they really went in the wrong direction in cashing out, making revenue out of open source when competing with a service company like Amazon. When you have a product like that, you need to actually build your ecosystem to be successful in terms of revenue, and this ecosystem usually is about services, because if you're doing something open source, you cannot actually rely to have like a product revenue on it. You need to build an ecosystem of services around consultancy, around expertise, and actually this is the thing that you want to drive.
Yeah, Partly that, but also I looked at MongoDB and that journey that happened over the last couple of years, because it's quite interesting, because it gives you a look into the future for what's going to happen, or what could be happening with Elasticsearch. I'm not saying that will happen, but MongoDB's story is actually quite interesting. When they introduced the SSPL, from that moment, things actually worked out really well for MongoDB. So I find that quite interesting. They introduced Atlas, which is a MongoDB as a service in the cloud of your preference. And if you, I looked at the financial reports of MongoDB, and that's actually driving huge revenue for them. So people want full MongoDB by the MongoDB guys, but they want it in their own cloud, obviously, because they want their applications to talk to it. And MongoDB has devised a way to do that, and I find that a very interesting path forward. And if you look at the stock price of MongoDB and the revenue, and all the numbers, all the graphs are to the right and up. So for me, that's a quite interesting story.
Hint, hint, Elastic, hint, hint.
It's interesting because, like, for most part, like, Mongo is a thing that if you can get expertise from them instead of building homegrown, you should do that, because from my experience, it can get wrong in so many ways. So it's
So can Elastic, trust me. People were building their own their SIEM solutions, saying you don't want to bother maintaining Elasticsearch because you need such a big workforce to do just that.
No.
Yeah.
It's I think there's quite a bit of ways in which this can play out. I also like the Grafana approach that Amazon took, where they're offering Grafana as a service. If you want to go to enterprise Grafana, you can do that within your AWS bill, and the revenue actually flows to Grafana, Grafana Inc., the company, which for me, those are the ideal situations where companies that make good technology get paid for making that good technology, and there's enough.
And it's customer centric, because you simplify billing and all that stuff, which is usually a big part of selecting a technology. But it's also open source friendly. Like you actually respect your users instead of forcing a decision like this on them. So I think it's a story that hasn't ended yet. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, the whole open source and cloud providers story is very much developing over the past few years, but it will be a few more years for that to crystallize. Unfortunately, we have reached already the end of our story. I want to. Last week we had internal guests, so I didn't really want to give them a space to market anything they want. But you guys are both external, so I want to give you both a little bit of time to say whatever you want to say, or promote something, or have a little.
15 seconds each. Go on.
We have to be like with on the commercials that is
beep beep
like,
beep.
When there's a commercial of a medicine or some pills, and it's slightly on the not working side, and they just shoot up some sentence at the end. It's your own responsibility. Blah 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 blah. When you're buying this, it's super fast. I'm pretty sure they're like. Twisting the knob. There's not a real person saying that one. It's
no, yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's right.
All right, Joep, you go first.
Yeah, so the only thing I really want to pitch is a new event I'm creating coincidentally with Walter. It's called Cloud Explorers Forum, and we take a no-nonsense approach to doing technical events. So no, sales bullshit or any marketing. We just do the real technical content. A discussion panel with the technologists from a couple of vendors that actually know their stuff. We do a discussion. We talk about, things like we do here, and then with that, you go home or you stay at home with a bag of extra knowledge and extra relationships with the right people within the vendors.
Good for you
Cool.
guys. Geek out event. Yay.
Oh yes.
Basically.
Sounds great. I would follow that.
So
CloudExplorersForum.com. You
Thank
can
you.
go there. Tsinner, do you want to say something as well?
Yeah, with the open source vibe, I was just about to suggest that perhaps Lena could invite me again after FOSDEM, which is taking place in the beginning of February. So this is the biggest open source conference in Europe, and this year is it's all online for obvious
Okay.
reasons. I have some friends that we are going. Like we went for the past 4 years. We were there every year, and this year, unfortunately, we are going to miss it. Not be on site at least, but a lot of stuff interesting going on there. So I hope that we can discuss that after the conference. I think there would be very interesting stuff around open source and around all the technologies. And the other thing, maybe I would want to bump in that as a VMware employee, I would like to say that we do have a large open source, I'd say, even here in Sofia, we have a large team doing open source stuff. And I encourage you all guys to have a look if you can, like, if
Find
think
it
you
online.
can find it. Yeah, find
Is
online.
your R&D center
Thanks.
in Sofia too, Sana? You do a lot of R&D there, right?
We have, actually, like 1,500 people are in the second largest R&D site of VMware after Palo Alto. So yeah, we do a lot of R&D, but I'm mostly in consultancy and PSO stuff. I do DevOps for a large consultancy team. So a lot of interesting stuff going on as well. But yeah, for sure, I'm really into open source, and perhaps we can make some other time, like demoing some of the stuff that we do. I think could be interesting.
Nice.
Or at least have a discussion, because there are a lot of stuff that as well are just our own fork, and
Coincidentally,
there are
I know
better
about a
stuff
cool new event
in
that
the open
does
source.
discussions around open source.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, sure.
CloudExplorersForum.com.
Okay, we're way over time. Way over time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Lena, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.